Hello, welcome to video number 3 in this series for your revision. This is called Making Comparisons. Without further ado, let's get on to it. What are the important notes for your comparison? Well, basically, you must look out for your common criteria. Your common criteria must be something that is consistent in both sources, right? It must be one level higher as well, just like your inference, right? It should not be something surface level that you see right at the source, but you must go higher. Okay? And make sure it's consistent. For example, if your CC is about how the Japanese treated the Chinese, then both inferences must specifically be about the treatment of the Japanese towards the Chinese, not the Malays, not the Indians, not the Malays, Indians, or Europeans, right? It must be the Chinese. Hence, you must be consistent. All right. Make your common criteria clear at the start. Likewise, both evidences must have a direct link to how the Japanese treated the Chinese, right? So make sure you're quoting the right things. Make sure in your quoting of evidence that the characters are there, the actions are there that can imply the criteria that you are making. All right, so common criteria, very important to have a good common criteria in your comparison. Now, important notes. In most cases, this will be how it will look like, right? You need to write one similar paragraph and one different paragraph. This is in most cases, okay? And bear in mind, both paragraphs cannot overlap with one another. In other words, they cannot contradict with one another. All right, they cannot contradict with one another. For example, if your similarity paragraph you wrote, both sources are similar because it tells me that the local people were treated harshly, right? And then your difference paragraph you wrote, both sources are different on the treatment. One was harsh, the other one tell me they were treated well. What are you doing here? Although one of it may be correct, but the fact that you contradicted yourself in the next paragraph implies that you are not really understanding both sources well. Okay, so check because some markers may not give you the correct marks for either of the paragraphs if they are strict. So make sure that you don't contradict yourself. Look for another topic if you can to differentiate between your similarity and your difference. Now, important notes. When you do your comparison, you are also making inferences, right? You are also making inferences. Hence, like what I said just now, you must go one level above. It cannot be something too surface level. It must be one level above. For example, if you say both are similar as they both are about the are talking about, okay, I dislike this phrasing by saying talking about. Okay, tell me exactly. Don't say they're talking about the topic. Tell me what about the topic are they talking about. Both sources are similar as they are both about the Chinese in Singapore. What about the Chinese? Right? This is as long as they would put the word Chinese there, then you wrote both are similar in the Chinese. So this one is not acceptable. It's too surface level. You have to go one level above. Take it as if you're doing an inference as far as possible. Right? As you are making inference, again, your explanation has to meet the same requirements. This is going back to your basic inference skills. Your explanation again, clear, right? Ayao in your own words, and please provide casual links. You must convince me of your stand. Alright, so your explanation must have the relevant causal links, right? Or in other words, have the relevant extensions. Not generic extensions, but specific extensions, right? Specific extensions that help provide the causal link to your stand. Moving on. Optional but not recommended. Okay, in order to not get a 0 mark, one thing you can do is to write the basic similarity or difference based on the provenance first to get at least 1 to 2 marks. What I mean by this, here's an example. Both sources are different. In that one is talking about an account by prisoner of war, another is an account by searching survivor. So you're just comparing and telling me the surface level difference from the provenance itself. This is a level 1 answer, alright? Just write it down, right, for safety. In case your content comparison is wrong or is misinterpreted, at least you have this thing to fall back on so that you don't get 0. You get at least L1, 1 to 2 marks. Now, moving on to the nitty-gritty things. Writing format for similarity. of course, answer the question, right? Like what I like to say, please respect the question. How do you respect the question? You respect the question by answering directly, by writing the word similar. Don't start with, right? Please don't start here. Don't start with source A states this, which means that. Source B states this, which means that. Then you're not giving me your criteria at the start. Alright, so your start should look like this. Both sources are indeed similar. Alright, because they tell me, then find out the topic, right? The topic, and then find out the common inferences from both sources. Okay, topic plus your common inferences. Alright, next thing, source A states evidence, write down the evidence, quote it if you need to. Similarly, source B states, not you need to, you must. Source B states, then give me the evidence here. Then after that, you can explain it together, right? Thus, both sources imply, because both sources more or less have the same inferences. So, more or less, it's up to you. You can either explain it individually or you can explain it together at the end. But if you explain it at the end, make sure that you're talking about both sources, right? Okay? So this is for your similarity. Okay? Give me the common inferences at the start. Okay, now going to your difference, it's a little bit different, but you must do the same principles. Please answer the question in front. Both sources are different with regards to, and then finally over here is your topic without the inferences. Alright, your common criteria is here without the inferences. Why do you not write the inference yet? Because the inferences are different, and you will write the inferences in your next line, which is here, right? Source A tells me that regarding, go back to the topic again to make sure you're consistent, right? Regarding this topic, then this is my inference. However, regarding this topic, can you see the topic here are consistent with each other? Regarding the same topic, however, you have a contrasting inference here, contrasting second inference over here. Okay, then you give me the evidence, explain. This is seen in source A, which states, quote my evidence, and then explain. When you do the explain here, alright, bear in mind, you must write the key skills again for explanation. It's clear, it's in your own words. I yao again. Then, however, B states evidence, then explanation again, I yao in your own words. Alright, so if you give me a clear topic at the start, then the marker will be less inclined to mark you down because you are clear on what you are talking about. This main sentence in front is going to be the anchor for your paragraph. This main sentence here is very important because it is the anchor. Don't let the marker go around trying to find out what is your criteria. Tell the marker the criteria from the start in your first line. And please answer the question. Respect the question. If it asks you how different or how similar are they, right? They are both similar, they are both different. Now, I'm going to show you these two sources that's from your paper, right? I mean, from your practice paper. So, source C is an account by a Chinese man, okay? And then source D is an account by an Indian man about life in a Japanese occupation. So, how will you do it? I will highlight some of the key things, okay, that I see from these sources first. Hang on. Okay, so let's look at source C first. Now, what do I see here? People turn to stealing when 4 people were caught stealing, their heads were chopped off. Alright, when 4 were caught stealing, their heads were chopped off and displayed in public. Alright, anyone who has seen as a threat was dealt in a harsh way. Then we move on to the second part. Tales of torture by police was common. Despite this, there were still those who risked death rather than get others into trouble. Okay, I was one of them who refused to reveal the culprit. Right? This means what? What does it imply here? Right? They help one another, right? The locals actually help one another. This is my inference. I can see from here the locals are helping one another. Can I see this same notion of help, teamwork, care for one another in my second source? Well, let's take a look. The Japanese wanted to remove the Western influence. So first you have here where Japanese wanted to remove Japanese culture to influence the minds of the people. They have to learn the language. They have to sing the anthem. Then they hated the Chinese the most. Okay, now let's move on to the second part. One morning, some Chinese came to my house to hide from the Japanese. My mother gave her a sari to disguise her as an Indian. She helped to apply charcoal on her face and her hands to hide her identity. Now, do we see the same inference here in the yellow portion? The Chinese came to my house to hide from the Japanese. My mother gave her a sari to the Chinese woman to disguise her as an Indian. Is there an idea of here helping, right? Sacrifice, right? Care, unity. Is it the same here? Unity also. They rather risk death, right? Sacrifice, right? The locals helping one another. Unity, sacrifice. I see it both in both sentences from source C. I also see it from source D. So there you have it. Look carefully. There will be a glaring similarity in your face. Okay? In this case, the similarity is that they care for one another. The locals are looking out for one another. And that is my topic. My topic is the relationship between the locals. Alright, so I have found out my topic here. My topic is my relationship of the locals. And my common inference is that they care. Right? They care for one another. My topic on my common criteria is the relationship. I'm talking about the relationship as my topic. And then my criteria, my inferences are both show that the local people actually care a lot for one another. Then when I look at the green portion, okay, this one, they caught stealing the hands chopped off displayed in public. Second one, they have to sing the national anthem. Right? Why do you think they do all these things to influence the minds, right? So it's talking about control. It's the method of control, right? So from here, the green line, I can see method of control is different. Here is more towards the harsh side, right? They make people control them by fear, through harshness, right? Cutting their heads off. This is through harshness. Here you see trying to control the minds, bringing them to Japanese, making them learn Japanese language. So here is more propaganda, control through propaganda, right, to the hearts of the people, hearts and minds. So again, look carefully. My main thing here is, my main topic would be my method of control, right? And then when I see below, I see the two methods. One is propaganda from source D, and the other is harshness and fairness from source C. And that is how you should annotate your source before you write down your actual answer. Now, take a look at the similarity, right? At the start, I have answered the question. C and D are similar in saying that the locals assisted one another, right? Answer the question. Here's my inference. Inference is here. ATQ over here. Very clear in my topic, very clear in my inferences. They assisted one another to avoid being persecuted by the Japanese. So evidence here, C says one man blah 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 blah, view the culprit, while D says some man get a Chinese woman the sari to disguise her as an Indian. So they are willing to help one another. So I explained together, right? I have made my causal links here. My combined causal links. Okay? They are willing. The fact that my evidence says so, my causal link is actually my so what again. So what if you see that they are helping to disguise her as an Indian? This implies that the local people are actually willing to help one another to prevent them from being ill treated by the Japanese, right? You can also say there's the idea of care, there's the idea of sacrifice, there's the idea of unity between the different races, and this can be seen in both sources. As such, this explanation helps imply my main inference here in that the locals assisted one another to avoid being persecuted. Now, let's look at the difference. Now again, ATQ from the start, both source C and D are different. Tell me the criteria first. The methods to control the people. Very clear here. I didn't start with inference of individual sources. I started with the combined topic I'm looking at. The combined common criteria I'm looking at, or the CC, is here. The methods to control. How did I get this? I got this by close reading of both sources to look for a topic that has clear contrasting inferences. So it's the method used to control the people. After this, then I will write my inferences for both sources and explain how they contradict with one another. So C states that the Japanese use fear, while D states that the Japanese use propaganda. So both, I'm talking about the same topic, right? I'm talking about the same topic or the same criteria. However, I have contrasting inferences. Regarding this same topic. Here, inference is fear, while the other one, same thing, controlling of the people, is through propaganda. So I am consistent, right? This shows consistency, and this is what I want to see when you do your exam as well. Consistency in your topic and consistency in your inferences. Okay, then after that, you just evidence explain, evidence explain. Again, your explanation, once again, do the same thing. Please provide the causal links. Okay, please provide the causal links. All right, the following points are some of the mistakes that you have made in your exam. I think I'll do it in a separate video because this is too long. All right, so this is exactly how you should do your inference question, how you should do your basic inference comparison question.